Okay, hello everybody. So today's kind of an interesting day. I always like this day when we go through this class. We'll take a brief look at scripting, server-side scripting and client-side scripting. And for the most part, this class is about the static web pages, the one where we just present information, they don't really change. But it is kind of nice to at least see some have our websites do small things. We'll get started on that here in just a second. So we can go ahead and take a look at a small server-side script and a small client-side script to get a preview of both of them. Certainly not an all-encompassing picture because both of those are an entire class on their own. And I thought I'd grab this. So last night somebody printed out this paper and taped it to all the offices and in the IT department and the computer labs. I have no idea who printed it out. Got back to my office late yesterday afternoon. There was one taped to the door, but it's for positions, internship positions at Samtech in New Albany. It's a really good company. It started in New Albany. It's a worldwide company now, but they have several internships available. A data team for those interested in databases. Software development internship, so that applies directly to everybody in here. Let's see, software development interns at Samtech will get a chance to learn about building and supporting the applications that power the entire Samtech enterprise. Systems include, but are not limited to sales, manufacturing, marketing, operations, and supply chain software. Rotations on this team include roles as product owners, software engineers, systems architect, UCD designer, and many more. So an internship and the description for the software internship ends with the positions they have available. So it's an internship that could definitely lead somewhere. I have no idea who put this on the door. I want to make sure you knew about it immediately. Just Google Samtech, SAMTEC, and somewhere on their page, you should be able to find stuff about applying, who to send your resume to and all that. And I have been trying to track down who printed it out and taped it to the door without sending an email about it. So that we can address questions and stuff. But I want to make sure and let you all know about it because you can definitely find that company. I've known quite a few people that work at that company over the years, and all of them are really, really happy with their job. So good company to work for, but it was a printout taped to the door, not an email. So, and I haven't been able to find who taped it to the door yet. So if you just Google Samtech, get right to their top page or about his careers. So somewhere in here, there should be information about who to contact and tell them you saw, you heard about an intern tell them you're a student at Ivy Tech in Sellersburg and you heard about internship opportunities. Because it does explicitly say on that printout, which is a printout from email, that it was intended for Ivy Tech Sellersburg students. So internships are nice, get some experience, and when the internship description ends with a list of the positions they have available, that kind of hint is a strong hint that that internship is, they plan for those internships to lead somewhere. So I will try to track down more information about that and let you all know, but I wanted to make sure and let you know immediately about it. Let's see, anything else on the list? Oh, the two things on the list are just to do some scripting and make sure there's lots of lab time so you can play around with the class examples, right? Normal copy along in class example, and then in lab time, play around with it, make small changes, see what happens. Just kind of introducing it here. you guys have a couple ideas, so won't get too in depth with it, but take a look at having our pages do something. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? Okay, I assume silence means no questions. So I'm going to share the screen here. And open this up. So, oh yeah, also, some of y'all, I think I told you this last night in the other class. On Monday, I apparently kept saying Thursday, and this is a Monday, Wednesday class. If I do that, feel free to correct me. I was talking to one of the English instructors the other day, and I mentioned about how I always just tell people to interrupt me. And she commented, what she tells people is there's no such thing as an interruption in Zoom. And if you have something to say, unmute and speak up. That's kind of the only way to get across. But if I say something like, this is a Monday, Wednesday class, and I repeatedly say something like on Thursday, feel free to say something immediately about it. When I got home Monday, on my primary laptop, when I went to open it up, when I got home, there was a bunch of little dots showing up, looking like somebody was clicking on the touch screen. And then I noticed that there was a big crack going all the way across the screen, and it looked like it was tapping right around that crack. So after struggling with it, I finally managed to disable the touch screen, thinking that's what it was. That crack was just making it think somebody was clicking on it. But it was still doing it. So I had to wake up yesterday morning and run to Walmart first thing in the morning and grab a new computer or a new PC. So far, I like Windows 11, but the RAM on the new one is twice as big as the RAM on twice as much RAM as I had on the old one. So some of the things that I'm liking about Windows 11 so far might have to do with the faster and bigger computer. But so far, I've been happy with it. For those who haven't tried Windows 11 yet, but I had to get a new computer. So I guess first let's start with server-side scripting. So I'm going to make a little form. We talked about the form elements the other day, which is the input boxes basically. I don't want to see that. How do I? No, I don't see that. A new file. So one of the things, well, it was the discussion board that was written. This class doesn't really cover much scripting, it's all static stuff, but a common element is forums where we can get maybe contact information from a user, make reservations, things that we'll need saved. Those have to be done on a server-side script. Our textbook doesn't really mention any server-side scripting. They have you use one that's pre-built, and then that discussion board, which was in the statewide course shell. I always forget that one's there. I think this is the fourth time I've taught this course, and there was once that I remembered to remove that one. As you go out and look at a bunch of free ones, some of them aren't even free. Some of them I think are 30-day trials. And I know I don't sign up for those, and I saw at least one person put that on the discussion board that they don't do 30-day trials either. Yeah, it's either free or it's not free is the way I categorize it. That middle ground of a 30-day trial doesn't count either way. And I always forget to change that discussion board until I go to great discussion boards and see the post is on there. But one of the things it does is just a way to collect that data from the forum. So I was thinking, well, that would make a great class example for our server-side scripting coverage, which is we can just take some data from a form, like maybe a contact thing, get a little bit of information from the user. Let's see, I'll go ahead and set up the file and sort of make some notes about what needs to be here while talking about it. New folder, 223. Oh, class 223. work. And I don't want to call this file index because I want to see the table of contents. We'll see why here in a few minutes. But whenever we load it on the server, I want to be able to see the table of contents, to see every file that's loaded in this directory on that domain. I'll call it contact.html, and maybe put together a little contact sort of form. Well, I'll go ahead and get all this stuff started like normal, and then I'll add a comment in here. Pretty sure we talked about comments before. In most of our programming languages, comments are completely ignored. That will not be the case in HTML because of backward compatibility. Before things were standardized with HTML5 in 2014, 15, somewhere around there, the middle of the 20 teens. So basically 2.5 decades after HTML was created, standardization finally appeared. So before that, all the different browsers kind of did their own thing. They might recognize different tags or display different tags, the same tag differently, and we needed workarounds. So one common workaround was to comment out sections of the code, but have the browsers not really ignore it. It was like suggested ignore it. So the browsers will still display what's in there. And then back in the days when the browsers all did their own thing, it just couldn't display the part that was commented out. So if you put HTML code inside of a comment, it will still end up showing on your page in most cases. So it's not like the comments we have in other ones, but a good place to make like a little list of things that needs to happen. So what does a contact page have? A contact page will need their name. So let's say get user name. Probably want their email. Get user's email. Get a comment from the user. I'm gonna put it. Any other stuff would follow suit with this. That's probably enough to get the basic to see the idea. We'll just make a contact us form or get something like that. You get the user's name, the email, and why they want us to contact them or something. The basic things we want to put on a form. So something you might want to include on your final projects. A lot of y'all with your topics. If you have interesting topics like debates on things about Star Trek or RVs for sale, that's something your user might be like, oh, this is nice. Oh, I want to know more about this. And so a little contact form would be nice. And we saw in that discussion board was about little pre-made things that could do it, which I guess technically does save us a little bit of typing, but it's not difficult typing once we know the syntax. And it follows along very, very nicely. Basically, because what we're going to look at is PHP, which is definitely one of the most popular ones. And long story short, PHP is C++ converted to a loosely typed interpreted language. And pretty much all of our modern programming languages are at least partially based off C++. So what we do in PHP should look familiar if you've seen any program. If you haven't seen any had any programming courses yet, like scripting type programming, for this course, we've been doing the encoding type of programming for the most part. If you haven't had those yet, the stuff will look familiar when you see it. So sort of a preview on that. So we're going to get that stuff, and I'm just going to write it to a text file. That'll work. And then our website will have access to the domain it's hosted on. So we'll be able to see it in the background. I'm not going to get in a link to that file afterwards, but it's not really any different. We're going to write our data to a text file, but we could extend that concept and write it to a text file with the .html extension that includes a hyperlink reference, a link to that text file so we could read it. Keep our example somewhat basic and just sort of preview of PHP. I was just going to leave the text file on the domain so we can see it. We can download it and read what's in it. So, well, we need a form to do that stuff. So I'll please enter your information if you would like us to contact you. I don't know, something like that, some little description of what needs to go in the form. And then those, and then those things we saw the other day, we need a way to get the user's name. I'll do this as a list this time. I used paragraphs the other day. I'm just going to use a list item. The other day I was using paragraphs because the input fields themselves don't include any sort of line breaks. We need something to give us another line. Spread these things out amongst different lines. A list of, let's say, an input type needs to be text. And the server, we talked about this the other day, the server will receive things stored in variables that match the name field we put on there. So we need to put in name attribute to work with server-side scripting. I'll just call it name. That's a good one for it. Then do another one with an input type equals email. Name field, email is a good name for it. Make it easy to keep track of once we get it over to the script. List item, input type equals, and then a comment. We need more than just a little text box for a comment. Some people might have really, really big comments for us, right? I might have a whole lot of things to say. So instead of an input field, I'll use a text area. Text area, rows, give them 23 rows to type in, and maybe 56 columns. And again, it needs the name attribute to go to the server. I'll call it comment. So that's the first thing coming to my mind. Finish out the text area element. Close that list item and then close that unordered list. All of that should look familiar. I guess the biggest change there is using list items or paragraphs like we did the other day. Or I think the book uses the break tag to actually put a line break in there. The biggest thing there is just an example of how there's more than one way to do these things. So if we go give that a quick preview. There's our contact information. I think I got my rows and columns reversed from what I was thinking. I meant to have a short body box to type in order with the tall, narrow box. Some sort of labels would be nice. and maybe some style on there. I'll just do an embedded style tag. We haven't done one of those in a moment. Remember, our general trend is going to be an external style sheet, and that way all the pages on the site look the same. And then if a particular page needs to look a little different than the rest, then we can embed a style sheet to override that external one. And if a particular element on the page needs to look different than the normal for the site, we can put an inline style rule as an attribute right in the tag. Haven't done an embedded style in a minute. So what I was noticing is that unordered list has our the little dots beside it. What's the name for that? It's on one of my notes from like 2 days ago, I think. Yeah, right near the top. List style type. I'm turn the dots off. So list style type. Done that. I think that's the way it'll turn the dots off. There we go. Now it's kind of hard for the user to tell what goes in what. Our textbook uses that label thing with the for attribute. I don't hardly ever do that because it doesn't really add an advantage here. If you want to do math in HTML, which you probably never will, I will do once in the class just to show you that it's possible. And you probably never will unless you want to prove to somebody that it's possible. The for attribute is useful there, but it doesn't really contribute anything on our to our forms that we can get elsewhere. Placeholder. I'll just do it with the, instead of labels, I'll do the hint text. Yeah, for a long time, I struggled with the style rules to line up labels nicely and all that stuff. Get the labels positioned nicely next to the boxes and all that organization. So then when convention, I guess it's been 5 or 6 years, it's kind of fading out now, so I should probably change again. But when convention came, the hint text was replacing labels. I was really, really happy to join that convention because getting labels and boxes and all sorts of different size things lined up correctly can be a bit of a headache sometimes with CSS. Enter your name. I still like to use the hint text because, well, I guess it's mostly that it's just a little bit easier than trying to line things up with the CSS. Enter your email address. And placeholder equals enter your comments here. Oh yeah, and those rows and columns are probably backwards. So all that should look somewhat familiar. Oh, this is what's going wrong. It's an actual typo. That should probably, I was missing an equal sign there. But everything there is stuff we've seen before. There we go. Enter name, email address, a big spot to type. We can add some margins around there. Got a style roll up here, so maybe on all of our inputs, add a margin all the way around of 2.3 elements. Give them some color. background colors, I don't know. I'll just put a random one in there. We talked about colors, so a random color will work for today's example. There we go. Notice it didn't really spread out and get the background color into the other one the same way. So might want the same style rules applied to that text area. So have that go to input and text area elements. And I'm gonna do one more style rule. Input and then pseudo elements. I think the book's already talked about them. It is not. I don't think I talked about them in class. I think I already passed the lecture notes where I had them in here. We'll talk about those very soon. Along with our elements, we can select certain things about our elements, like when the mouse hovers over it, or something about after it or before it, and different things about our elements. I'll talk about those in detail soon. I think I've already passed the lecture notes to add a minute, so somehow that got overlooked. But one of the things is when it has focus. So that input box, when it has focus, I'll change the background color to pink. A random color, but the main point there is input. We don't want the input element. That colon means just kind of something about the input element. We call those pseudo elements. Pseudo element selectors. It's going to need the same thing for the other one. Text area, focus, and focus. If you're not familiar with that word, that's where things. That's where we're currently working. That's what we're currently working. So like on my laptop here right now, the Atom text editor currently has the focus in the editing portion. But if I push, like say, the Alt key, notice the cursor disappeared from the editor and it went up to the top level main menu. So now the top level main menu has the focus. Or if I come over to the Project Explorer, File Explorer, now that has the focus. So focus is where we're working at. So if I click in there to type, then it changes colors to make it very clear which box we are typing in. And Google Chrome just wants to keep predicting what goes in that box. Doesn't do it for that one, so that not a little prediction get in the way. Which can be useful, because most forms, they want to our name and email address every time. And so we're going to enter the same name and email address, but when there's a lot of class examples, I get some strange looking emails in here just to fill out that box. But that gives us a form that we can fill out. The only thing left, we probably want a submit button. So I'll add that here at the bottom. Oops. Where's my N key? Oh, there it is. I had to find N on the new keyboard. An input with type equal to submit. Value in this case is the words that show on the button. So typically we put the word submit there. Also one for reset. Input type equals reset. And same thing, value equals, this time I'll put clear form just so that it says something different. Usually it's type equals reset, value equals reset, those match. But for class example here, I want them explicitly want them to not match. Move that away from the bottom of the page. Should all be stuff we've seen before. So now if I reload this. Oh, there it is. That worked, but those buttons are blue, so they match the typing in stuff. So the other selector we saw, our book does not have this one. There's lots of ways we can select things. I always want to include this one because it's very, very useful. We saw this the other day. We can also select by the attributes in our tag. By putting the tag name and then square brackets, so we want an attribute of that tag. And we want our buttons, looks like the type has something, we have a type or value attribute we could select by. Or both of them have the values would be different, but both of them, the type would be probably the easiest thing to know there. Well, actually, it's different either way, isn't it? So input means that type equal to submit, as well as input, and we'll choose our select by our type attribute for the reset. That way we get both buttons. And set the background color to, I don't know, light gray. I'll type in a light gray. C2, C2, C2. There we go, just a basic form, nothing too fancy. I'm zoomed out a little bit too much. There we go. That way we can see the whole thing. So just instructions on what it would be, probably something more detailed in your site. But then you're only going to have a few boxes that are relevant, like what's your name, contact information, what's the comment you want to make, what's the date you want to make the comment on, something like that to send us, so they can go through this and then pass that information back to us. Which we saw the other day. To send it to the server, we have two methods. We can either get it or post it. And ultimately, we probably want to post it. Because remember, the get method tags it on the URL and we can see the whole thing. But while debugging it, it's a whole lot easier to debug something when we can see the place where a bug might be happening. So while putting it together, we will probably want a get method here. And then we'll switch it to post afterwards. Once we know it's working correct. It can be useful to see this stuff while we're trying to debug it. And then to actually process the form on the server, the action we're requesting the server to take is going to be run some other script. I'm just going to call it the same thing. I'm going to call it contact.php. And now we hit a bit of a problem. So that finishes out the HTML part, the CSS part, what we've mostly been studying. So we want to do something with this form. In particular, I'm just going to write it to a text file. That way, well, it's on our domain, so we have access to the files on our domain, so we can go in there and see that file and download it. If we know what it's going to be called, we could create a link to it somewhere in the page. Might come back and do that later so we can see it. When we write a new file, we have to dynamically change some HTML stuff somewhere in order to get PHP to work. The thing is, talking about this very briefly in class the other day, PHP is a server-side script. It only works on a server. So to even test it, we have to be on a server. So I'm gonna go ahead and upload this to the domain, but on the way there, I want to look at something. There are local virtual servers we can use. My favorite and by far one of the most popular in the world is Jamf. I'm gonna go ahead and pronounce the X with the ZH sound. And it's a local host virtual server. You install it, turn it on, and then you can run run your stuff locally. And installing it's quite easy. Just download the appropriate installer. Hopefully it won't take too long. It's kind of a big file. There's a lot to it. It's an entire virtual server and the environment for the virtual server to run in and all sorts of stuff. So there's just sort of a click and go thing. Now if I run that, the normal yes, give it permission on a Windows machine. I think everybody's probably seen that. And you get this warning, it might slow it down. You might need to change your configuration. I haven't tried it on Windows 11 yet, so hopefully everything's okay. Oh, there's what we get. So there's an Apache server, which you can see is grayed out, so we can't even uncheck that one. MySQL database, in particular, it's a MariaDB, for those who are familiar with the relational databases. MariaDB version of MySQL. FileZilla, file transfer protocol. The server-side version is already on there. Mercury mail server, and Tomcat. I'm drawing a blank on what Tomcat is. It's a common thing. It's a very common thing. So you'll just choose a spot to install it. One thing to watch out for. Usually when we install software, we want to put it in on a Windows machine, programs file x86, or someplace that does not have write access because we don't want our software being changed. That is not the case with the server. We do need write access here. So make sure it's someplace that you have write access when you put it, that it can write files. And just click through the installer. I guess it finished. Uploaded it to another page. Oh, there it goes. It just went to that page. So a quick, easy install. The Apache, a virtual Apache server is kind of a nice thing to test with. Y'all have probably encountered that thing where Windows and Mac don't care about our uppercase and lowercase letters, but the Linux servers certainly do. So your site will work, but then when you upload it to your domain host, it won't work. And if you're going to do stuff with servers, everybody here is studying IT. If you're going to do stuff with servers, it's also kind of nice to have a practice environment. And virtual environments are really, really nice for practicing on, because if something goes wrong, you can just delete it, as opposed to a very expensive server. If something goes wrong, you might have to get another very expensive server. So if you have a virtual one, you can just, you can mess around with it, learn it in the learning process, and just delete it when you break it. It's a great way to learn. But you don't want to break a very expensive server. Should be getting close. The little green bar is full. Since this is a software development course, I'll also mention not every meter is accurate. Sometimes those meters are just arbitrary so that the user has something to look at, because it won't seem as long if there's something to look at. Sometimes they are. The only way you can really tell for sure is if you have a meter and the list of files printing out. And the last one where we just have a meter, sometimes those are arbitrary, so keep that in mind when you're making installers. That users might lose patience and start clicking on things while it's doing stuff in the background if there's not a meter there. Yes, start the control panel. So here's what the software looks like for it. And just click start to get the Apache server or whichever one of the features you want. The Apache server and the local MySQL database are kind of nice. I'll just go ahead and start that. You can see what ports it's running on. That'll be necessary later. Beyond what we're talking about today. You can do all sorts of configurations, your shell to control it, all that stuff. For our purpose here, we just kind of want to host a site. So when we're hosting sites, I'll go over here first. So now once it's running, and you'll find that under your start menu, you just go to XAMPP control panel. That's what I was just looking at. And then you can either type the word localhost. We'll go right to it. It kind of looks like this. The address for the machine you're on is always going to be 127.0.0.1. That's the IP address of the machine you are currently working on. But the word localhost usually means the same thing too. And is more meaningful to a human than a set of numbers. That's why we always put words in place of IP addresses, because they're not very useful for humans. So it gives us sort of this starting page. There's PHP my admin to control the database. That's useful. We don't want this start page. We probably want to see our own stuff. So over in the file explorer where that installed, and if you choose a different one for some reason, if you look around, see some other ones that you like. There's another one called MAMP, has an M for the first letter, and there's also a W for WAMP. That's Mac, then Apache, MySQL, PHP, Perl. The X is cross-platform. And then the AMP is Apache, MySQL, PHP, and Perl. So there's lots of versions. I've heard a few years back, it was very, very consistent for people to say that MAMP, the one with an M, ran better on Macs. There's also WAMP for a Windows specific one. The X is cross-platform, and I've been running on this Mac for quite a while and haven't had any trouble with it. So I think they fixed the issues with the cross-platform one. But there is a similar one that starts with an M or a W for your system if you want. And other ones will follow the same layout because they're all based off of Zoom's putting this message box in my way, and I can't get rid of it. That'll work, maybe. Yeah, Zoom's popping up that message box that says, I need to connect my audio. That would cause the problem right here. A whole lot of feedback because my microphone is directly in front of the soundbar. Okay, so if we go to where that's installed on the C drive in XAMPP, we start looking at these folders, you'll see one that should look familiar from the folders labeled on your domain host. The htdocs folder. That's where the Apache servers look for the things that should show on the web pages. Basically, your web pages go on an Apache server, go in the htdocs folder. So whatever you want to show on the server, you'll put into this page. So open another file explorer. I'll make it easiest to copy over. So I grab today's folders.
copy those and paste them here. They're in that htdocs folder under class-223. So now if I go to localhost / class-223. So basically localhost goes to your index file in the top level of the htdocs folder. And then you can just add a slash for any directories and other files in there. If I go here, we'll see our list and there's our web page. And then we can test the PHP locally. I was thinking I was going, I'll just go ahead and do it on the domain host. But once you have that, then you basically have a you have a little virtual server running, so you can test all of your server-side scripts, the stuff that never makes it to the client. So those website servers do a lot. We've only seen a lot. We've only seen a little bit. Pretty much just this is about the only thing we're going to see about servers about this class. But it can be very useful to have a local one to test with. That is my recommendation for one. But for today, I'm going to go right to the domain host. It's that one I recommended. We'll run PHP by default. And WordPress uses PHP. So most of your domain hosts should accept PHP by default. That's pretty much the standard. If we go to the W3 school site, the web standards, and look through what we have, there's an HTML reference, a CSS reference, JavaScript reference, there's a PHP reference right on there. For a web server programming language. And it is specifically to run on servers. So it goes, fits in with our normal stuff. Most of your domain hosts should handle it, unless it's been shut off for some reason. So I'll just go in here and just as a reminder, there's that htdocs folder. So you notice on that local host server installed, there's a whole bunch of stuff and had to kind of dig through and find htdocs. But on the domain host, all I can see is the htdocs folder. So all that other stuff happens in the background. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have any configuration or anything to do. So here's where all those files are going. So once again, I'll just drag this over here. That took a while. Is that this one? Yep. So here's this file we just wrote. You can go in here and edit it. We need to right here. Most domain hosts will have an editor. Maybe not, probably not all of them, but most of them will have some sort of editor built in that we can use. I guess I should open that page so we can see it. Which an index page is really nice. Make a nice looking table of contents. Don't do that. By default, there's a default table of contents page where you're basically just looking at a file explorer, which probably isn't what you want to show your user. For our class examples, I figured that would be fine. There it is, class 223 and contact.html. So here's our page, and we need to create the server-side script that will do something with this. So I'll go over here to the file manager. And zoom buttons are in the way again. Oh, that's going to be in the way there too. There's a button for a new file. So I'll just create it right here. Contact and give it the .php extension. So first thing we probably want to do is run a bit of a test. I'll do that in a minute. So much like PHP is made to go with HTML, so it looks like a tag. The biggest difference is there's question marks and we spread it out because everything needs to go inside of that tag. Actually, I'm gonna do something different here. Let me do a different lead in here. And well, I'm just jumping over here to get the predictive text real quick because this text editor will print all of this stuff at once. So I just grab the predictive text from here and I'm gonna paste that in so it looks like we're making a web page. And all the tags we're familiar with, y'all know how to type that stuff. You can probably copy and paste it from an example you got close by. Like I just did there. But it's a web page that we want to run. So, whoops. We're going to save. And I'll just build up to it. This is the script page. Put some words on there to keep forgetting to do that. Can't use Control S here. Just start by putting some words on here to make sure we go to the right page. So we hit the submit button. Oh, there we go. It went over to the script page and it's showing on the, it shows on the browser, right? See the name of it here. It is a .php file, but it still shows it appears in the browser the same because it's full of HTML code. So that's one of the big advantages of PHP is we don't necessarily have to separate it like we do some of our other languages. Some of our other languages, we might have to write them in a completely separate spot and then just leave a spot in the HTML to connect it, which adds an extra step in scripting. But with PHP, it's not when the guy originally made it, it was not a coincidence that he made it look like a tag. There's different ways we can set up a tag. There's a question marker that's required. The first question marker is required, the second one isn't. But all of our code needs to go in that tag. Now it looks like just another tag in the HTML. And I always do the second question mark to keep track of what that's a closing angle bracket for. So I put the question mark there to tell that that is part of the PHP tag. Just an indicator. Only the first one is actually required. And then we can start putting in some code to test things. And the standard test, just to make sure everything is connected and running like it's supposed to, is y'all have probably seen it before. It's the words hello world. So echo means send a string from the server to the client. So whenever we finish whatever processing we're going to do and want to send the results back to the actual web page so the client can see, we'll echo it. Echo the final results back to the page. So now if I go over here and click submit on the form. Oh, oops. We'll try that again. I'm going to check autosave. So I'm going to save the file and try that again. So now with those changes saved, when I click submit, you see that hello world echoed back to the page. And if we view the page source, you'll notice that PHP tag disappeared. And those words we echoed back are just
text on the page, they're not identified. Right? There's nothing we could do to style those words. So when we echo stuff back from the page, we usually want to include some HTML tags so that we can style it. Make that a header. Then we can add a style rule in up here. So that our H1 elements have a color of orange. That's a color, well, not save, auto save. So if I go back and submit the form, there we go. Now we got that stuff coming back. So that's the first thing is, first couple steps is PHP sort of goes into a tag that we can intermingle with other HTML. We can also write it separately, but for this level, it's probably easiest just to intermingle it in an HTML somewhere where we want the results to be. So now we're ready to actually process this stuff. PHP gives us a lot of capability to. PHP is a modification of C++, which is the object-oriented language. So for those who have studied object-oriented stuff in other classes, it gives us a lot of power. So then instead of things like this head element up here, it would be the same as everything on the site. We could do that as a PHP object. So our script has a bunch of PHP processing, and there's like a head object that we just echo back to all our pages. And then we don't have to repeatedly type the same thing on every page. It opens up a lot of power, but that is for a different thing. We're just going to quickly introduce it. We do all our processing in here. So we don't have to have HTML on there, but we can. So it often makes things a whole lot easier if we intermingle it. So one thing about PHP is it is a loosely typed language. Loosely typed means we do not have to worry about the type of data we have at all. There's actually only one type of data. The only type of data we have in a loosely typed language is resource. So they're all the same. Strings, and integers, booleans, and floating point numbers, and massive custom objects or pre-built objects that we can use, database results, arrays. They're all just a resource. They're only one type of data, so we don't have to worry about type. You can usually spot these languages at a glance, because when we have a loosely typed language, our variables all start with a $sign. So I'm going to create a name to a place to put the name of the name the user enters in the form. And I'm just going to call it name. That's a good name for it. And then the stuff coming from our form will be put into an array called post. Again, it starts with a $sign, and underscore post is the stuff the user posted to the server. It should be. Up until about 3 years ago, we had to treat post and get separately. So I am just assuming that this server has been updated in the last 3 years, and we can use post for both of them. But if not, I'll change the other one. I'll go back to the form and change that to post, because we should really be using post. And then over in our HTML page, which is, we look at here, that name field has the name. So that is the index in the array that was sent to the server, the post array. So if we go back over here, if we ask for the name field, that will get us the name. And then we need the end of instruction character. Have to have it here. Every instruction needs to end with the character that means end of instruction.
So name equals post of the name field, end of instruction. And notice I didn't read that as dollar sign. Every variable will have will start with a dollar sign. So when I'm saying the variable names, it's just implied that there's a dollar sign there. So let's check and see if that came through okay. Whoops. That was the backspace key. Echo. So I was going to do little steps and make sure each step works along the way. First thing I'm gonna do is make sure I can get that name and echo it back. Up until about a couple years ago, we had to do post and get separately. It was, the name of it was $_get. So it wasn't different. It was, it just went to a different array. That should be up to date now. Okay, that's saved. If I go back, test the name field, hit submit. Oh, that's email. That wouldn't work anyway. Take that out of there. Test the name field and click submit. Yeah, that probably does want it. The other one. So you can see it got passed correctly. Let me go back and see if I do have to post it. So I come over here and edit that right on the domain host. Oh. Can't get to my edit button. That's weird. Okay, I'll look at this one. It's open over here. And that's, it's not scrolling, so I don't know. It won't let me get to my edit button. But you can always edit stuff locally and then re-upload that. Let's see if that fixed. This name, submit. Okay, so something went wrong. It appears there's an error of type 500. And 500 means the computer can't identify the error. So somewhere while I was talking, I made a typo or something, so I'll have to track that down. And oh, I missed an equal sign. The name variable is assigned what was already in that array. Sorry, hopefully everybody that's seen programming before spotted that. We have a variable, we need our assignment operator. But notice we didn't really get an error message. This is one of the biggest reasons other languages took the place of C++. So this is modified C++. And a lot of times in C++, the computer can't do it, it just won't do it. The error messages were added on by a human later. And, so you're probably used to working in languages where error messages have already been added to that language. So I'll go back, the stuff's still typed in there. Submit that. So it should have echoed some stuff. Oh. Let me see if this works. After reloading the page. Okay, there we go. So what happened, it it is still distinguishing between post and get. Which is just an array called get. I say 3 years ago, it seems like a long time, but the last 2 years stretched out for a very, very long time. Y'all know how the last 2 years went. We were all stuck at home by ourselves, stuck at home for months and months on end. Seemed to alter the passage of time. Sometimes it seemed to really stretch out. So once again, we were able to echo that back. And one of the nicest things about loosely typed languages is how we concatenate stuff in them. You're probably all, for those who have seen programming elsewhere, you're used to start the string, so maybe we want to add an H1 tag in there. That's the only thing that's styled right now. Then in the string, and you use some symbol to add stuff onto it. Plus signs common, or an ampersand. For PHP, our concatenation is actually going to be dot, or a period, concatenates. But with a loosely typed language, your languages where the variables start with the $sign, the nicest thing about that is we can put that right in our string. So we have an H1 tag, then we have that name variable, and then we have the closing H1 tag. So since we only have the one data type and all our variables start with the $sign, you can just throw that right into the string. You don't have to break out of the string to concatenate pieces together in loosely typed languages. Very, very nice. The trade-off for that is the $sign needs an escape sequence. So for those who have seen other programming languages, whenever we have characters, if we need to type a character the programming language would know, we have to put a backslash before it. Normally a backslash, sometimes a grave accent, also called a tick. There's different, we have to put in the special symbol to escape out of the programming language to do that. So since $sign means something, we need an escape sequence for a $sign, but that's a rather small issue to deal with. Because when you're programming, probably going to get used to so enter a name. When you're programming, you're going to be used to inputting escape sequences anyway. Okay, so it looks like I got the name field okay. That gave us something. And we just want to check our other two fields the same way. Go back. Reload this. So I thought I was going to be able to stop to convert this. The W3 schools reference, which I don't need to use this every time now. It's been long enough that the official reference material said we can stop using the get array. We all saw the get array did not. If I sent it get and then pulled it from the post array, that did not work. So whichever you use, get or post, make sure the name matches over here. And we can do that for all three of them. We have a name, and we have an email. Again, is in that $_post array called email, and a comment is in that post array. I forgot what I called it. Oh, name is comment. That was a good name for it. And then just some echoes to make sure it works. I'll put in a paragraph tag. Again, those are in variables, so loosely typed language, so we don't have to do any special concatenation. We can just put our variables into the string. Email, / paragraph, and echo back. Something that would format differently. You know, we need style there. When I'll do an H3, that'll format different paragraph. Comment. remember your end of instruction character. So echo this string back to the client that requested the web page. Then end of instruction. Whoops. Sorry, I may click that button. So saying, send this string to the client that requested this script to run. End of instruction. Make sure that's saved. And let's see, Chris A@B.C. It's an email field, so it has some validation. Here is the test message. This is a test. Only a test. Some sort of message in there. So when we submit it, okay, it looks like the script got all our data okay. That's the first step. And it looks from the clock on the wall, it looks like it's about 2 minutes from the time I was wanting to take a break. Back when all the classes were 16 weeks long, they were all an hour and 15-minute classes. So that seems like a good time to take a break. Now that classes have been condensed down to 8 weeks and they're several hours long instead of so using that traditional time. This seems like a good stopping point because the next step is to take this data and put that into a text file so that we can save it. So we can come back later and check and see what the user wanted to contact us about. Does anybody have any questions about that so far before we take a break? And hopefully you can see how that, since PHP looks like a tag, it just intermingles very, very nicely right with our HTML code. So I assume the silence means no questions. So why don't we go ahead and take 10 minutes? Does that sound good to everybody? Yeah. Or anybody? This clock on the desk computer says 2:14. So we will get back to this at 2:24. I'll stop this and I'll see y'all in just a moment. I'm gonna go track down my Mountain Dew. I have a Mountain Dew around here somewhere.